the thing about a pig, you use everything. I mean, I've cooked up, crumbed pigtails before, used everything from the offal of the pig, all the way up to, the pig's head and the pig's ears. I make a crispy pig's ears with balsamic vinegar and chili. Everything is usable on a pig, and that's what I like about it.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Growing up in a family with a rich and diverse culinary background, Adrian Richardson always knew a career in hospitality would be much more than just a job. Now with a career that encompasses TV and his own restaurants, he has placed whole beast butchery at the heart of everything that he does. Adrian, you're kind of like an unofficial pork king down under. How did the interest in pork start for you?
The pork king, I like that. Or maybe the ambassador of pork, or maybe I could be the dictator of pork or something. We could go crazy here. I just love cooking pork. It's such a wonderful animal, and I can get sort of like Homer Simpson on this, but it's one of those beasts that you can do so much with. I mean, if you're looking at cattle, I mean, you basically make a steak, you braise some meat. But with a pig, you can make just about anything. Everything from roasting a baby suckling pig, which I'm sure you're going to ask me about later on, to, like making a perfect roast. You've got ham, you've got small goods, you've got the head making brawn. All of these things are such wonderful products that you can make from pork, and that's why I love that little piggy so much.
Well, you've got an in-house butcher at La Luna. Tell us about the process there. Are you getting whole pigs in and sort of using every element? What do you do in there in the kitchen?
Look, Angelo's been with us now for probably 18 years. He's, I believe, his ancestors were the butchers for the Roman emperors. His butchery credentials go back that far. He's been amazing. I mean, we've been able to work together in the kitchen. You mentioned the kitchen's mostly chefs, and then butchers usually live somewhere else. But to bring the two together, you bring those skills into the kitchen. So we've actually, adding more chef work to his butchery, and he's adding more butchery skills to our chef work. So, I mean, that's been fantastic. And that's allowed us to cure, or we make our own salami, capicola, lardo, prosciutto, pancetta. All of the small goods that we make, for La Luna Bistro and Bouvier Bar are made on the premises at La Luna. And we're making unduglia now, which is a fantastic thing. But on top of that, we also do one of our favorite things is the roast pork barrel, crispy crackling all the way around it, nice loin on the inside, the belly around it to keep it fat, and a nice seasoning on the inside. That's like a staple at La Luna Bistro. But then, it's going to happen pretty soon is the salami making season, or the small goods making season. We'll probably break down about 15 to 20 200 kilo pigs to process over the next couple of months to keep us self-sufficient in small goods. And that's an amazing time. The kitchen goes pretty much flat chat from about 5 a.m. to get everything made. We'll make cotechino one day, salami a couple of days after that. You sort of break it down a bit, but that's where the real hard work goes for the next couple of months. And Angelo will be very, very busy, a little bit grumpy at times, but he'll be very busy.
Well, with this focus of using the whole pig and doing so many things with it, how important are the connections with pork producers for you? And do you have some connections that you can tell us about?
Yeah, look, I've got a few pork connections. One of the main one is Judy Crow from Western Plains. I've been dealing with her for many years. In fact, she came to the restaurant 20 years ago. As a farmer and said, as a producer saying, look, we grow pigs, you chefs use them. What do you want from us? How can we make our product better for you? And the thing that I came up with is suckling pigs. I wanted little baby suckling pigs. Because you can only get 13 kilo. They called them suckling pigs. It's a long time since they were suckling. So I'm able to get, anything from 4 or 5 day old pigs. I know you're going to get a lot of death threats over this one. Trust me, they're delicious. Everything up to about 2 months. So they're about 4 to 5 kilos, which is I call it a plate size pig because, you can fit it on a nice big platter and, it's great for a romantic dinner for 4 or 5 or 10 people. It's great. I love that kind of stuff. But to me, it's all about using that entire animal. And the thing about a pig, you use everything. I mean, I've cooked up, crumbed pigtails before, used everything from the offal of the pig, all the way up to, the pig's head and the pig's ears. I make a crispy pig's ears with balsamic vinegar and chili. The snout, the head, everything is usable on a pig. And that's what I like about it.
I want to talk about sort of what you've created both with your restaurants and also on TV and the various things that you do. But take us back to when you were young. What sort of role did food play in your family?
Well, look, I come from quite an interesting family. And if you look at me, if you see a picture of me, red head, blue eyes, pink or white skin, whatever you call it, I actually have quite an unusual food background. Look, my mother's family is Italian, but it's a bit unusual the way where they grew up. My mother and my grandmother was born in Cairo of Sicilian descent. So she was born and grew up in Cairo in the Middle East. My grandfather comes from the north of Italy, a little village called Telve in Alta Adige, right in the north on the border of Austria. He, was in the North African Corps on the Italian side, got captured by the British, escaped, met up with my grandmother in Cairo. They got married, then they moved to Ethiopia and had my uncle and mother. And then they moved to Carlton, just around the corner from the restaurant is now. So that's one side. So from her, and I grew up in that kitchen with my nonna, one of the best cooks in the world. So she would cook all this sort of this mixture of great Italian food, but also this Middle Eastern and North African food. She was a beautiful cook. So I grew up eating all that. And it wasn't until I started cooking that I realized that baba ganoush is not Italian; it's actually Middle Eastern. So that was amazing. And, we ate she would make fresh pasta and, my grandfather grew stuff in the garden and that was incredible. But the other side of my family, my father's side, he was a chef. My grandfather was a chef that was trained at the Savoy Hotel in London in 1932. So he grew up to, he was telling me that he had worked under chefs that worked for Escoffier, the great chef from London. So he spent years in the kitchens there in England and France, and then after the Second World War, immigrated with his family to Australia and set up a restaurant in the Balzac in East Melbourne, and then went from there. But they were also vegetarians, really strict vegetarians. So I had this, this crazy, French cookery, all vegetarians on one side and the Italian Middle Eastern on the other. And you look at me and you would think, a chocolate milkshake and a ham sandwich is about as extravagant as I always go. And then on top of that, this is going to blow your mind actually. When I was a young boy, my father was in the Air Force. So I grew up in Malaysia, and, from the age of 4 to 7 or something. So I grew up eating a lot of Asian food. Malaysia is the best place to eat in Asian food. It's incredible. So I had all this stuff together. So, put me into a kitchen and throw any cuisine at me, and I feel quite natural with it. So that I think has helped me so much in my career because everything's possible, everything's natural to me, and there's hardly anything that I wouldn't put in my mouth. And stop and think about that one, but just be careful with that one.
Well, when did you first sort of get the inkling that a career as a chef was a path that you wanted to follow? And do you remember that sort of the first sort of time you became an apprentice and worked in a commercial kitchen?
Well, yeah, I actually, during my schooling, I was put up a year. So I it was about a quarter of the way through my year 11. I was going to grammar school, Essendon Grammar in Melbourne, and it was decided that my services were no longer required at the school. So, I was always mucking around. I wasn't doing anything there. It was just useless me being there. So I dropped out of school and, Dad sat me down and said, go do something. I'd always liked flying. So I went and got my pilot's license, at 16, because my dad didn't want me sitting around. And he said, okay, now you got to pay for him. So I went and got a job in a kitchen to pay for my flying lessons. But the flying lessons sort of dropped off and the work in the kitchen kept on going. I went back to school, finished my VCE, and then, everyone was thinking I was going to go on to flying or uni or something. But I actually turned around and said to everyone, to the horror of everyone, that, I'm going to take up an apprenticeship in a kitchen. And in those days, to be an apprentice, in a kitchen, as opposed to going to university or flying a plane around. They thought I was bananas because, it's not like it is today. It was just a dirty, scruffy old kitchen, usually some drunk old German chef yelling at you and throwing a knife at you or something. It's, but it's, as it's turned around, it's, cooking in kitchens has become quite a popular thing now. It's exciting. You still get drunk old Germans trying to throw things at you, but, it's just, there's a lot more you can do with this life now.
What were the really important sort of stages early on in your chefing career that helped sort of forge a career for you and set you on a path?
Look, for me, it was, that thirst for knowledge, that thirst for skills. Cooking is really it's a trade. It's a skills-based industry. So if you're in the same pub cooking the same schnitzel and the same deep-fried prawns and, the same stuff, for 5, 6, 10 years, you're not going to learn nothing, mate, as they say to you. You've got to keep moving around and you just got to keep, going into challenging places. I was able to work at the Victorian Arts Centre, which had, 70 chefs, multiple kitchens, pastry departments, all those sorts of things, hotel kitchens. So by moving around every few years and travelling overseas and, going to different kitchens and challenging yourself to work in different kitchens all over the place with different people, you pick up a lot of skills. And not necessarily cooking skills. You get a lot of those, but you also pick up on skills how to deal with people. We all watch, people like Gordon Ramsay screaming, yelling and, all that violence and stuff. Really, you learn once you've seen enough of it that it doesn't really work. You sort of, discipline's great in kitchens, but you sort of learn, okay, well, that's how that person's treating me. I hate their guts. I'm never going to frigging work for them again. And I'll never treat anyone the way that they're treating me. And you sort of package that up and take it with you. And when you get the opportunity to, in a leadership role, you unpack that little thing and you sort of think, how am I going to deal with people? Because that's what, hospitality is all about. It's all about people. It's about teamwork. And if you got some belligerent bastard, making everyone's life miserable, you no longer have that beautiful team, that beautiful team of the front of house and back of house working together and, everything goes beautifully. So that's important to me.
You've had La Luna Bistro for over 2 decades now. Well, tell us about the beginnings of that and putting that together.
Oh, look, I decided that I didn't want to work for anyone anymore. I'd had enough and I'd always wanted to have my own place. So I managed to borrow $100,000. I don't know how anyone gave me $100,000 because I probably didn't deserve it in those days. I borrowed the money, got the lease on a site, which is La Luna Bistro, and spent all of that money setting it up. It was pretty, pretty rough around the edges. I had to paint everything and, I made the tables myself and a few other things, but that was fantastic. I got the kitchen running and it was up to me to come up with some really nice food. And I just wanted to do simple food. I wanted to make some handmade pasta, a little bit of meat. And I wanted to make the sort of place where people could come, once, twice a week, come on a regular basis instead of, once a year, it's your big celebratory, place to go to. I want it to be a really easy place to eat, have a glass of wine, have 10, that sort of place. And it's really, that sort of thing is it's evolved. It's still got the same feeling to it, but the place has evolved incredibly along the way. I mean, all the meat we dry age now and all the small goods and stuff, that's all come over the last, probably 18 years. And we've got really good at that side of it. But to me, it's still, you come into my house, my job is to make you feel warm and fuzzy and give you a lovely meal, some nice wine, lovely service, great food and a great feeling. So when you walk out the door, it's like, geez, I can't wait to come back there. That's what restaurants are about to me.
Running your own restaurant is a little bit different to running a kitchen for someone else. What were the challenges and what surprised you about having your own business?
Look, one of the most important things, and I wish I had paid attention to school, was accounting. And I tell everyone, I want to go into business. Well, mate, take a week off and go learn a little about bookkeeping and accounting because the numbers are really, really important. Often you find, and I talk to a lot of chefs, that, that I'm going to open a restaurant. I'm going to change the way people think about food. I'm going to, set my name up as being the best chef. Yeah, that sounds good. But really, if you're putting all your money into a business, you need to be smart about it. It's a business. So you need to make money. You need to figure out a way of making money. And look, you need to start somewhere. And where you finish is, that's years down the track, but you need to start somewhere. So you've got the fundamentals there. So you can start the business up, keep it operating. You got cash flow for the first 6, 12 months, and then bang, off you go again. But how many restaurants do you see where a chef starts it up 6 months, 12 months, 2 years later, it's gone? A lot of reasons for it, but, if you've got a handle on the financial part of it, it just makes life so much easier. Then, of course, you need to have the skills to be able to cook, put together a decent menu that people will be able to, come along and enjoy, a little bit for everyone. And then you've got to be able to, the skills of managing people is really important. That's probably one of the most important things. If you can manage people and get people to believe in you and go along the journey with you, you've got it made. If you think you're going to scream and yell from the kitchen, might as well give up now. But, that's probably the best thing. And just a love for the business. Long hours, hard work. It's grueling at times. And, just when you think you've had your worst day ever, then the next day it gets even worse, So, but if you can get through all of those things and you get to the end of the week, it's like, fuck, there's nothing else I would do. Well, then that's it. You belong, you've got no choice. I can't do anything else. I love it. If everything burnt down tomorrow, I'd get up the next day and just start again. It's just the way it is.
You've created so many incredible events and cooked all over Australia and all over the globe. Is there any sort of events or things that you're part of that you can tell us about?
Well, look, being invited to go over to James Beard House in New York twice was a pretty big thing for me. I like, because that's it's quite. I knew it was quite a prestigious thing the first time I was invited over for, and I sort of went over with another chef who was helping me out, and we stopped off on the way and had a couple of dinners, and every time we talked to chefs over there, because they always come and have a chat. Chefs are like that; it's like a brotherhood, or sisterhood. Whenever you go to their restaurant and they get to know you're a chef, they drag everything out for you. But the Americans would say, "Oh my goodness, congratulations! That's outstanding." And so that was quite a big thing for me. And to go back and do it again, I thought that was incredible. You're in this little house in New York City. It's set up as like a big restaurant and seats about 80 or 90 people. You have a cocktail party. You've got this amazing little kitchen, and every chef who is anyone in the world has been through this kitchen. So it's an incredible place. And then you cook a dinner, get up and have a chat with everyone. And it was just an amazing experience. And just being in New York as well, it's just the center of the universe, is fantastic. And then from that, I suppose the other thing that I really enjoyed, comes down to the TV side of things, was being on Iron Chef USA. It was one of those things I'd always wanted to be on. It was always one of my goals, and to be invited to be a contestant on there. But they didn't put me up against one Iron Chef. They put myself and two other Australian chefs up against 3 Iron Chefs. So we competed simultaneously with 3 of them. So and they only beat us by half a point, which I think it was rigged. But it took 3 of them to beat us. So there you go. That tells you how good we are.
What was the pressure of cooking in that Iron Chef environment like compared to in a commercial kitchen?
Look, commercial kitchens, you sort of feel, that's where we belong. That's a natural environment for a chef, to put them in a commercial kitchen. And look, you can take a chef out of one commercial kitchen, put them in another. You take a 5-minute walk around, bang, I got it. You know where the equipment is. You know what's going on. You got your menu and off you do. That's what you do normally. However, to step into a studio kitchen is a completely different thing altogether, because not only do you have the pressure of actually cooking something, you have TV cameras, you've got hosts talking to you, you're mic'd up, so anything you say is captured. So you have to be really careful with that. And then, you've got a whole lot of other crew around, and it's not a regular kitchen. It's a studio kitchen, and there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of everything going on. So it's it is a completely different scenario. It's like taking you and I and putting us in the front seat of a jumbo jet at 35,000 feet across the Atlantic and saying, okay, boys, off you go. It's that sort of thing. It is really, you're really out of your league. And having done as much TV as I had done, probably 12, 13 years of TV before I did Iron Chef, I was petrified. I was really nervous. So for someone who hadn't done TV before, they would just be, they'd be on that 747. I can tell you that.
Well, let's talk about television for a second. You've done many shows, and people are very familiar with you on Australian television. Where did it all start? Where was the first step into that world?
Oh, look, one of the first things I did was with Bert Newton on TV. He used to do a morning show on Channel 10. And so I managed to do a segment with him. But I started to get a little bit of attention with the media, so I took on an agent, but that was my first real gig with him. So, I'd been doing a comedy show with some other guys, about making sausages. So I bought a few of those little gags and bits of equipment along. And if you can see it on YouTube, it's actually quite funny. But I brought some of those things along and put them under the bench so he didn't know they were coming. I'd as part of my research of going on the show, I kept an eye on, some of the chefs that had been on there. And if you're not prepared and if you're not really organised, he would just walk all over them. It's like, you can see he's a professional. You're in his world. So I did a lot of practice with it and had these, like a big corking gun and, like 7 meters of pink lycra sausage to show you how to tie the sausage. So I had all these gags in there ready for him, and he was just an absolute professional. So you hardly needed to feed him a line, and he was off. And so I had all these things, and by the end of it, the camera stopped, and he came over and said, "Adrian, that was outstanding. You really did well with this, and I can see you made an effort." That was sort of my first thing, and to me was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, you need to do it properly. And, I'm stepping into his world. So, for him to say that was sort of like an eye opener for me, but it was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it really well. But that was one of the first things I did. And then after that was Ready, Steady, Cook, which was, that was good fun as well. And then we did Boys Weekend, that was a lot of fun. Manu Fidel, Gary Megan, myself and Miguel Cascales traveling around Australia. My liver was a bit drained after that one. I had to get a transplant, I think. But we had a lot of fun, and I think it comes out in the show. And then after that was Secret Meat Business, and I've done a few other bits and pieces, but they're my main sort of shows. Oh, then there's Good Chef, Bad Chef, which I've been doing for 12 years now. So I've been doing a lot of TV. Actually, I feel like I do more TV than bloody restaurants. It's a lot of fun.
Well, what's it like? What's it like trying to balance, the foundation that you have with the restaurant world and the world of sort of TV chef? Is it difficult to manage the two?
Comes down to one of my earlier points. If you've got the right people around you, you can do anything. Because really, because I go for a couple of months and film TV shows, I leave the restaurants. So I've got really good people running them. I'm communicating every day with them on the phone, or I might pop in later on, but I know them, I trust them. And so I'm quite comfortable to hand the restaurants or the venues over to them while I'm filming. And they know that, I'm under a lot of stress with the filming. So, solve the problems and then get on with it. And that's the attitude they have. So together it allows me to do so much by having those good people around. So look, it's the TV stuff is quite stressful, and you put in a lot of effort. It's quite hard work. But I love doing it, and knowing that at the venues, I have an amazing team looking after things. It just makes me feel so much better. I'm comfortable. That's probably the best thing for me is having everything else in place. I mean, even the family, they know when I'm filming that Dad's, maybe a little bit grumpy at times, but they're really understanding of me. I'm up early in the morning and home late at night. They're really understanding. So I've got the people around me and the environment around me that make it work really, really well.
At the top of the show, we talked about the fact that you're kind of the unofficial Baron of Bacon, or King of Pork. Let's talk about pork. You did mention the suckling pigs, and it only takes half a second on social media to see these events that you put on with the suckling pigs, and how incredible they look. Tell us about cooking a suckling pig and how to get the best out of it.
Look, roasting pork, if you want to get crackling, what I'm about to say sort of fits in with most pork that we cook, you know. So if you want to get that crackling, one of the tricks is buy good pork, buy Australian pork. Okay, that's probably the first thing. If it's got a bone in it, it's going to be Australian. So that's one of the things we like to promote first is Australian. I mean, the next thing is making sure that the skin dries out. If you're buying your pork packaged, the suckling pig isn't packaged, but the thing I do is put it into the fridge or your cool room, take the plastic off it so that the skin starts to dry out. And what you'll see is it goes from that soft, white, pinky sort of look to a harder, slightly yellowy look. And that's the skin drying out. That's really important. Because if the skin is dry, it's going to help it to crackle a lot easier. And then what I do is, have the oven on flat out, warp drive, 230, 240 degrees Celsius. I say 220, but I just turn it up. The hotter the better. And I rub lots of oil, lots of salt on the outside, more salt than you would imagine. Push it on the outside, rub it on the outside, and then straight into the oven. And what you're doing with that is that oil and the salt helps to dry out the skin and help it crackle. And that hot, intense oven at the beginning for that 20, 25 minutes helps to get the crackle going. That's really important at the start. I find if you dry it out, get that crackle bubbled up and blistered up, then you can turn the oven down after 20, 25 minutes, to 165 degrees Celsius. And then you cook the pork all the way through. I always tell people, use a digital thermometer. When it gets to 72 degrees Celsius on the inside of it, bang, it's cooked. It's never going to be overcooked. And when it's cooked, to 72, it's going to be moist and juicy and tender. And the other thing is letting it rest. Letting it rest for half the cooking time. So when you cut into it, all the juices stay in the meat where they belong. Now, a suckling pig, same thing. The only thing I would do differently, I'll put it on a wire rack. I put some aluminium foil and herbs on the inside of it just to hold the belly out so it looks nice and plump. I put a little skewer into the legs of it just to hold it up, and the skewer goes through the leg and into the wire rack underneath, and it sort of frames it up so it doesn't move around in the oven. I'm of course using larger ovens, the 900 watt ovens, and basically the pork goes in. I put a little bit of foil around the ears and around the tail to stop them from burning, and into the oven they go, and they take about 55 minutes to cook a whole suckling pig at about 4 to 5 kilos, which sounds like not much, but it's actually, they're beautiful. And the thing I love when you open that oven up and you see the fat boiling next to the skin, around the belly area, it's just delicious. And everyone loves eating a suckling pig. I'm almost starting to foam at the mouth now. I just was thinking maybe I need some suckling. Oh, just looking around for some pork.
Yeah, you've got me going as well. For a chef that gets the whole sort of carcass in and uses every sort of cut, is there a favorite cut that might be sort of a rarer cut that you like to cook and you could tell us about and how you treat it?
Yeah. I mean, my favorite, one of the things I've been doing, basically, because I can cook anything with a pulse, that's guaranteed. But, one of the things that I do, I've done something there's like an apprentice group that comes every year. It's, proud to be a chef there. Fonterra put it together, but there's 35 young apprentices that come to my restaurant every year. And one of the things I serve up to them is pig's head. So I'll get the pig's head. I'll steam it for about 4 hours or so at a low temperature, and then take it out, let it cool down a little bit, and then back in the oven, similar recipe to what I did before, hot oven, salt and oil on it, then turn it down. It takes about 45 minutes to cook a whole pig's head, but it crackles up, the ears pop out, and there is so much meat on that pig's head. And I do it for a couple of reasons. One, it's really nice, really bloody delicious, rich and flavoursome. But to me, as I usually give a talk to all the apprentices there, it's like that pig's head cost me $4 to $6. It cost me nothing, but I'm able to feed, 8 to 10 of you with one pig's head, and look at all the good stuff that comes out of it. And it's sort of like, it's one of those things that a pig's head, you discard it, but there's so much in there, and why would you waste it? And it is delicious. So I'm just trying to make that point with them, and they love it. Halfway through, they probably had a little bit of sauce as well, but they're into it, trying to bust it open so they can get the brains out of it. And it's a fantastic thing. They're running around the room with the pigs, the skulls on their heads. It goes almost Viking, medieval kind of stuff. But, I think they get the message. They're chefs. You got to let them go.
You mentioned the incredible levels that you've achieved with small goods that you make as well, and constantly evolving with that. What's probably your favourite small good that you produce on site?
Look, I like them a lot, and I'm going to give you a couple of them. One would be, and I'll come back to the pig's head again. When I was 15, my grandfather taught me how to make brawn, which is using the pig's head, and you make a brawn. I'll make a brawn today. It's a little bit different. It's a galantine, but that's one of my favourite things because that's something that my grandfather passed down to me, and I'm able to replicate it, 40 years later. So I really, really like that one. The other thing is the undulia. We've been making a lot of that lately, which is, if I can describe it as a salami that's spreadable, it's very soft and spreadable with some olive oil and lots of chili and peppers in it. That's one of my favourite things at the moment. It's spicy, and I had some the other day that really, it burnt a hole in both ends. I can tell you that. It was really hot. That's one of my favourite things at the moment. But also, like the prosciutto is one of the things that we make at La Luna, and we make about 70 legs a year. It's sweet, it's salty, and the prosciutto that we make, you can't get anywhere else in the world. There's only 2 venues we can get it, is at Bouvier Bar and Grill and La Luna Bistro. And to me, that's a special thing.
You've built this incredible career with your restaurants and also the TV world. What do you love about what you do?
No day is the same. I could be in Brisbane one day where we're looking at setting up a restaurant there. I can be, in a TV studio. I can be in the kitchen doing a function. I can be, driving somewhere to do a function in a regional town. Or I could be taking the day off and, fixing motorbikes or something. No, not one of my days is ever the same, and I'm never in the same place. It's fantastic. That's what I love about it. And, I have a lot of say in what I do now. And I basically pick fun jobs. If, I have a prerequisite that, they're either paying me a hell of a lot of money or it's going to be a lot of fun to do. And usually I'll go for that. It's a lot of fun to do. And the people I'm going to be with are fantastic. So, that's probably the best thing. I mean, look, on Friday, I was at the Gold Coast on an amazing boat, with 100 guests, myself, Manu Fidel and Colin Fasnich and Spencer Patrick, 4 chefs that I've been working with for years and known for years. We're on the boat cooking for all these people. We had a ball. It was fantastic. There was hardly any, I think they just paid our accommodation and our expenses. But the opportunity to get together, I was like, we all put our hand up to go for it. So it was a fantastic, fantastic event. That's what I love doing.
Well, Adrian, it's an absolute honour to have you and hear a little bit of your story on the Crackling today. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
An absolute pleasure, Huck, and we look forward to talking again.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.